now let's turn to our program. I'm going to ask Baha Zidan, who is the CEO of Azalea Health, to join me on stage along with our panelists. And Baha will introduce the panelists. But as we have them join us, think about AI and a few of the issues. And maybe there's a few quotes that would be appropriate. From Bill Gates.
You're next to me.
Generative AI has the potential to change the world in ways that we can't even imagine. It also has the potential to solve some of the world's biggest problems, such as climate change, poverty, and disease. That's a fairly positive message. When we think about the late Stephen Hawking, success in creating AI would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might also be the last unless we learn how to avoid the risks. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Baha Zidan and the panel to answer all of the tough questions. And afterwards, we're going to open it up to Q&A, and we're going to have a mic that I'm going to grab, and I'll be standing right up here. So if you have a question, you can come up and join me on right at the bottom of the stage with your question. So Baha, you're on.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. And I want to also thank Jennifer Doran for helping me with this program. Welcome. This is very exciting because it's a very exciting topic. I don't think I could read the news without seeing the word AI everywhere in the news. But before we go to the panelists, I want to go to the audience. How many of you use ChatGPT or generative AI on a daily basis? Oh wow, that's the vast majority. I wanted to share one thing that Microsoft and LinkedIn just released, the 2024 Work Trend Index, which showed actually 75% of knowledge workers are using ChatGPT and are using generative AI in their day-to-day work. So it's a very important topic, and today I would like you to help me welcome my panel. I'll start with Mr. John Hope Bryant. John is the chairman and CEO of Operation Hope and co-chair of the AI Ethics Council. John is an entrepreneur, author, philanthropist, prominent leader in our community. And in December 2023, Mr. John Bryant formed the AI Ethics Council of Atlanta with Sam Altman, who's one of the founders of ChatGPT and OpenAI. He also formed it with the former Atlanta Mayor Andrew Young, as well as other civic leaders in our community. Also, John has a bestseller, Financial Literacy for All. Next to John at the end is Pat Cisco. Pat is a managing director for the Southern Region for Microsoft. He's a seasoned sales executive, worked for 2 decades at Oracle, and recently now with Microsoft. As many of you know, Microsoft is doing a lot with AI and a major investor with OpenAI. And right next to me is Professor Mark Radel is a professor at Georgia Tech at School of Interactive Computing, and has done a lot of research on AI and machine learning, as well as his research focused on human-centered artificial intelligence and development of artificial intelligence and machine learning technology that understands and interacts with human users in more natural ways. So please help me welcome my panel. Mark, you're going through some slides that show us talk about AI, and you're welcome to stand up. All
right. I guess I get to go first. So thank you all for having me here. I'm going to start us off just by kind of giving us a little bit of background. I think many of us have used these technologies, but do I have to use that button? Okay. To kind of like set the stage, give a little bit of definitions, a little bit of background to kind of set the stage so we can have the panel, the conversations and the questions that I'm sure will all be kind of great coming from all of you. So the first question that often kind of comes to mind is like what this term artificial intelligence that gets thrown around every day. What does it mean? Now, unfortunately, no one really has a good definition for artificial intelligence. This is the one that I prefer. It is an artificial entity is considered intelligent if it performs behavior that a person might reasonably believe requires intelligence if a person were to do this. And that's an interesting definition, right, has a little bit of problems. First of all, we define intelligence with the word intelligence inside of it. But what I really want to focus on here is this reasonably believe that something is intelligent. So I want to take you through a little bit of a thought experiment here. Is the thermometer intelligent? The one that controls the HVAC in your house? Probably most of us would say no, right? It's a very simple thing. When it gets too hot, it turns on the air conditioning. When it gets too cold, it turns off. But also, think about what it does for you. If you had to stand there and turn off your HVAC on and off all day to keep yourself comfortable, how well would you do it? I'm horrible at this, right? So here we have a very simple thing that senses our environment, makes decisions on our behalf, and does a really, really good job at it, okay? Now think about a self-driving car, okay? Same thing, senses the environment, makes decisions. Turn left, turn right, stop, move forward, things like that, on our behalf as well.
All right. AI.
Not sure what I did there, right? Yet somehow we ascribe more intelligence to this because we think of driving as something complicated, something that humans are well equipped to do, but other things are not well equipped to do, right? They require some sort of thinking in the process. But this kind of sits out the spectrum. And how we approach the technology kind of depends on whether we think it's intelligent or not. But ultimately, artificial intelligence comes down to machines that do things, create behavior, change the environment on our behalf. We can often think about this as automation. This falls into a larger category, or a special type of artificial intelligence called machine learning has come out in the last few decades. What machine learning does is I like to think about this as kind of where data science and AI kind of intersect before. It's about discovering patterns in data. And what differentiates this between data science and artificial intelligence, or data science and machine learning, is in data science is about analyzing and finding insights in data that humans might act on. When artificial intelligence, the machine finds those insights and then acts upon it itself. So again, this is the automation thing. So it's data to pattern and then pattern to behavior. And what has really made this possible in the last couple decades and really most recently is lots and lots of data now we have access to and big computers to process, move around that data and manipulate that data. Now we're all kind of here because we're hearing about these things called large language models. Okay, ChatGPT, Bard, Gemini, Claude, those sorts of things. What is a large language model? It is simply machine learning and thus artificial intelligence. And what it does is it looks through large data sets of text, so language data, finds those patterns, and predicts the text that we want to receive in response to it. So we give it a set of text, it gives us the most likely response, the most likely text based on the data that it's seen before. So it's really text to text. So it sees text, it finds its patterns, and then repeats those patterns back to us when we ask them questions. And we've heard about all the kind of recent technologies, so I'll kind of skip over that. This falls into a larger category of AI called generative AI right now. Generative AI is exactly what it sounds like, things that generate things for us, right? So text, GPT-4 generates text for us. But we also have image generators, we now have video generators, we have audio generators as of just this last week. This is how fast things are moving. Largely what I want you to focus on when we talk about generation is content. These things create content. They don't just make classification yes, no decisions or decide whether to steer your car left or right. That's another type of decision. But they're producing things that we consume as text or images or video or audio, kind of sensory inputs to us. And what's kind of interesting here is what Seinfeld was talking about, because a lot of what we do in the economy is produce content of various types, whether it's reports or art or anything like that. And this is kind of where some of these kind of ethical considerations will come into play, which we'll talk about on the panel. How we interact with these generation systems, they're largely built on large language models, so we interact through them with text, right? We give them what's called prompts, but the prompts are text. The text that we want it to respond to, and then we either get text back or get images back and things like that. Since these things are pattern recognizers, like the most important thing I want you to know is when you talk to these things, it's not like talking to another human. They may appear very human, but they're just kind of repeating patterns back to you. That means if you give it vague instructions or vague text, you get vague responses back out. If you give it more specific And the more specific you can be about what you want, it's going to find a more specific pattern and produce a more specific answer. This creates a gulf of application. So how do you know what you want out of it if you don't know how to craft the question as precise as you need to? And that's where the big opportunities are in terms of deploying these technologies out in the real world inside of applications, helping the user interact with these machines to get the best response possible. And then, so yeah, as I mentioned before, generative AI, we're seeing text generators, image generators, music and audio, just like within the last few weeks, which is really kind of incredible. And then there's a large class of artificial intelligence outside of generative systems that help with medical imaging and drug discovery, things like that. But we shouldn't forget that there are other things other than large language models out there. And with that,
What could go wrong?
what could go wrong?
So we'll start with Mr. John Hope Bryant. You've created the AI Ethics Council here in Atlanta with Sam Altman. Tell us a little bit more about their mission, your mission in creating this council, and what do you see next for this council?
Hello, everybody. So, I'm not afraid of much. This was probably the most terrifying meeting I had in my adult life, which was the meeting with Sam Altman at Clark Atlanta University. Most terrifying and most inspiring in the same time, at the same point. I want to take a moment, though, a couple of clarifications. One, it's not the AI Council of Atlanta, although that would be cool. It's the AI Council, period. It's going to have a global impact. It just happens to be domiciled, in addition to Sam Altman and myself as co-chairs. It has prominent members, really are from Atlanta because Atlanta is rocking. Translate rocking. Atlanta is the mover in the world. I think the moral capital of the United States is Atlanta, with all due respect. And we have to have a couple at least one council member here actually, and that's Dr. Bernice A. King, who I think any place she's at, she deserves a round of applause. I don't know how many of you are working for free every day, but that's what she does every day. Zero compensation to the King Center, carrying her dad's legacy out. But you have the president of Clark Atlanta University, president of Morehouse, president of Spelman. Helene was going to be here, but she had a last-minute situation. Ambassador Andrew Young. I'm doing this from memory now. I'm missing somebody obvious. It'll come to me. But so those are the core members. We have a couple more members on the ethical side. We're going to add. Can't mention their names at the moment, but I think you'll be impressed with them. And then Sam and I are going to add folks on the technology side, which we think is actually more obvious. Yeah. Your boss at Microsoft, we were just talking about, was the hero really of this, because it really saved Sam's bacon when he's going through all this drama first part of the year. We're living in a moment in history. Like when I got the call from Sam, I was at the Milken Global Conference last year, and he called at 2 in the morning and said the White House needs to see me in a few days. And so I need to move up my schedule for what we talked about, which was a tour. Can I come to Atlanta after I leave the White House? Sure. And so I had 4 days to organize a meeting in Atlanta. We organized at Clark Atlanta. It was packed. Again, it took us 60 years to go from the horse and buggy to the automobile. 1850 to 1910. And in 1850, think about that, the horse was everything. It was transportation, it was machinery, it was class structure. If you had a horse, a certain kind of horse, or any kind of horse, you were
status.
It was status. Thank you. It was status. It was everything. And by 1910, it was glue. And I'm not being like pejorative or dramatic. It was literally, there was no meaningful value for a horse in commerce in 1910. Automobiles, you had 110 automobile manufacturers that stood up between 1901 and 1910. Most of it went out of business. By the way, this is happening right now. All these AI companies there's billions and billions and billions being thrown in AI. Most of it will be washed away, by the way. But no one's going to sit on the sidelines and wait for the final conclusion because they know this is everything. And this thing is going to go in 5 years. Like, before 2030, the world as we know it will be different.
So in the council, what you are focusing on addressing?
Lighting fires and avoiding infernos. So we want to light fires, lights on things that are important. You know, there are people in the world who will, people like Bill Gates and others have said, I think rightly so, and Sam has said, that this could cure cancer in 10 years. I think he's right. This could do a lot of good things. If you're a doctor in Kenya, we have the president of Kenya coming here tomorrow. If you're a doctor in the rural areas of Kenya, you'll have the same efficacy, theoretically, as Emory University.
Yeah.
You'll have it right in your hands, and you'll be able to correlate within seconds the solution for this mother here who's doing internal bleeding, and you don't have any of the infrastructure, but now you know how to treat her. On the other hand, you have some nutcase on the other side of the world who may have no ethical framework whatsoever, and who may decide, you know what, these village people are just not useful anymore, and create tools to zero them out, because we're not trying to be the government, so be clear on that. We actually, our first speaker for the council will be the Deputy Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, which we're going to do in the next couple of weeks. So we're working aligned with the government. We're not trying to be the government. We're going to create a set of rules of the road, if you will. So Sam asked me when he first showed me this model when I was in his office, and it freaked me out when he first showed it to me. He said, "Tell me about the tech leaders in your opinion of tech leaders in the Valley." And I said, "Well, I think that most of them are geniuses with a blind spot called people." That was funny. Anyway, but I was also serious about it, that they have great IQ, but maybe not great EQ. Yeah. And in every evolution that's happened, poor people, struggling people, working class people, those who are invisible, most Americans have not had most people in the world have not had a voice in the technology. Text was an accident, as you know. Yeah. Most people text today, but that was an accident. It was mobile phones, and then it was, we have these codes that are sort of an add-on. Most of us don't even make phone calls anymore, we text. We didn't have a hand in that. We didn't have a hand in the internet. We didn't have a hand in social media. It just sort of showed up on your front doorstep. Here's one thing about AI. 99% of black people don't know a thing about AI. Well, 99% of white people don't know a thing about AI. And so everybody's starting at the exact same place. By the way, can I get an amen on that? We know it's important, but nobody has really a clue about what he just presented up there. And it's happening while we're talking about it. You go to the grocery store, you go to a fast food restaurant. It's not AI, but it's robotics, which is a step to it. And 10 employees is now 3. You're hitting a screen. It's like it's just sort of easing into your world. And so it's gonna, about 20% of I think 40% of black jobs, black, poor, white, struggling people's jobs, high school educated jobs, gone in 5 years. All the service jobs, the restaurant jobs, the stuff that doesn't require expertise is going to be automated. So we got to retrain a whole generation of people so they have purpose in their life. This is, I think, one of the purposes of the AI Council, is not just to moralize or provide sort of sermons on the mount, but to provide practical examples of how we can create responsible GDP for the future of what I hope will be the continued leader of the free world, which is the United States of America.
So
go ahead.
Microsoft is trying to do the responsible thing with embedding AI into majority of their products. Pat, can you talk through what Microsoft is doing to enable their ecosystem with AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to follow on, I think what John was saying, I mean, it is a seminal moment. It is, the press, if you listen to the media, they will tell you that Microsoft is having our iPhone moment. We were very fortunate to have a very smart leader who decided to invest in OpenAI. It truly, we believe, leapfrogged us into, it's fantastic to be first to market in anything. But we recognized that in June of last year, we developed the leading principles of responsible AI. So we just recently released our first annual report, and transparency, the name is in the title. It's a responsible AI, transparent responsible AI. And we have those 6 tenets, and every single product that we produce, whether it's leveraging Azure OpenAI, whether it's our Copilot suite, whether it is another form of AI that's available on Azure, we embed those 6 guardrails into every single product. And those are, one of those is accountability and responsibility as well. So we've started the framework, but I think Sam said a couple of weeks ago that the current version of ChatGPT is probably the least sophisticated, dumbest model that we will work with. And everyone is, glad-handing and high-fiving, and this is the most remarkable thing ever. From his perspective, this is the least common denominator. It only gets better from here. And I will say the one thing that, working with customers and the regulators and everyone else, the speed of adoption is astonishing. It is remarkable. Nothing else. ChatGPT got to 100,000 or 100 million users in, I want to say 5 months or 2 months. It took TikTok like almost a year to get to that number, and TikTok was absolutely viral. So that's the one thing I will say, is that we've balancing those responsible tenets of AI along with the speed of adoption. And John's right, there are bad actors out there. One of the things that we've embedded in our tools, and we hope that everyone else embeds, is the ability to put some guardrails and to have some type of groundedness detection. And what I mean with that is, like, you cannot make the model go astray. When it gets a question or a prompt that it believes is off target, it will summarize and repeat it for you. It will ask you, are you sure about this? And then when it actually detects something that it should not be doing, it simply won't do it. A quick example, this past Thanksgiving, we were hosting like 24 people. My wife said, hey, could you make little placards to put at everyone's seat? And that designer tool was really cool. Could you, have a little personal photo? And I'm like, absolutely. It's going to take me about 30 minutes. I'll knock this out in no time. I got to the point where I was trying to describe my niece. She was a gymnast. I was like, hey, give me a picture of a girl doing a cartwheel with a one-legged turkey, and she's chewing on the drumstick. For the life of me, I couldn't get it to do that. It was like, nope, that's bad for the animal. And I'm like, okay. I finally, it took me about 50 minutes, but I was absolutely stumped. I had to explain, this is an American tradition. We gather for Thanksgiving. We cook turkey. We then eat the turkey. I finally got it, going back to the precision of the prompting. But, that is one of those things. I hope that every company that's developing AI embeds some type of guardrails into their technology.
So, Dr. Mark, we have a lot of academics in our audience, and one thing I wish I could have had when I was in college is ChatGPT.
Me too.
So how would the education leaders should be thinking about AI, and how should education embed AI in its institutional fabric?
Yeah, so educational system is having a moment, right, with systems that can ostensibly do our homework for us, solve our problems, write our code if we're studying computer science. And schools at all levels, K-12, higher education, really struggling with this question. We've seen kind of two responses. One is ban the technology, right? The other is embrace the technology. What I think this kind of tells us is that our education system is broken. ChatGPT didn't break our education system. Our education system has been broken for 40 years or more because it doesn't scale particularly well. So how do you do assessment? Well, the best thing to do is to talk to people, find out what they actually know. But you can't do it if you have 30 students in your class. You certainly can't do it like myself, who has 350 students in my class. So we turn to tools like tests, but tests are hackable, right? It's how we study for the SAT. We study the rule book, right? We study the answers. So my personal belief is that we need to embrace the technology, but we have to think about how we have to change the education to allow people to bring the technology into the classroom in a way that supports their learning. In the same way that we had the same problems with calculators in math, right? Now my 10-year-old learns how to use a scientific calculator in 3rd grade. Awesome, amazing, but things had to change and things took a long time. change for that. I think at the heart of this, what's really happening here is we had a very set way of what I call ways of knowing. How do we know if you know something? And at the college level, at the postgraduate level, it's about writing. Write this essay, write a report, tell me in written word what you know. Yeah, in legal system, right? It's all about writing. Everything gets written, right? Now we have a tool that can write for us, but it doesn't think for us, right? So we used to equate thinking and writing. Now we have to find ways to breaking those things down. Now, fortunately, we're still in a time where it's still pretty easy if we're paying attention to find out if people are not thinking and they're writing, right?
Yeah.
But this will change, and the education system has to keep up with this. We need the tools the responsible tools to make sure that these systems are working for us.
So one of the tools that we use at Azalea Health is Copilot, which is basically a programming tool that will make our developers, our engineers, more efficient. We find it to be elevating to our engineers. So instead of working in the minutia, they are actually working on thinking through solving the business problem. But there is a level of angst in some of our developers. Would this tool replace me one day? So Pat, is that the goal, or where do you see Copilot going?
Yeah, so and what we're talking about there is specifically GitHub Copilot and millions of developers on the platform. AI is an aid, not something to replace a developer with. You know, back in the day, we would stick two developers together. We'd have peer reviews, call it two in a box. Think of AI, think of Copilot as your co-developer. And I think whoever it was that came up with the term Copilot is genius. It's not autopilot, it's Copilot. It requires some human interaction. But it is there. It can translate code from one language to another. It can get rid of those mundane tasks, because we found most developers were just going into some code repository and doing a Control-C, Control-V. So you get different iterations of the code, different formats. It is a great way to standardize. Now, there's a Copilot for literally everything. And what is really nice from our perspective is to see some of our competitors develop that same Copilot nomenclature. Not everyone will do it, we get that, but we want to set Copilot up as the next Kleenex. You know, when you say, hand me a Kleenex, everyone in the room knows what you're talking about. So think of it as an aid, not something to replace a person. I have a young son who just entered his first grown-up job, just got his MBA and entered the workforce, and the very first thing they told him at his first conference was, AI will not replace you, but someone using AI will. So I thought that's a great message, and it is. We do have to get into the kind of retraining some of the younger folks, and actually the entire workforce.
That's a great segue, John. Thinking about how AI could level the playing field for the underserved communities and the people who has the means and the tools, and you've been thinking about that, talking about that, and workers know that. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, and it's fascinating. I'm just sitting here listening to this conversation. You're trying to do something which I actually admire. That's really hard to do. You're trying to have a tactical conversation and a strategic conversation at the same time. Because the issue is just so big, you want to have a conversation. But this is, if everybody's a little disjointed, because you're here and here and then you're here, then that's probably right where you're probably in the right place. You're trying to cover a lot of ground in an hour.
Yeah. 25 minutes.
Then you shouldn't have me up here. I can't say my name in 25 minutes, but
no,
so let me give you an immediate answer to your question. So one thing that hits me is you could have an AI grounded call center.
Yeah.
You're going to see that. You're going to have people trained in AI in call centers aggregating activities, and those from underserved communities can be trained and certified for that and have a living wage job in every community. And I just came up with that literally just sitting here. I think so. We're not going to sit on the AI Ethics Council is not going to sit on some PhD mountain and not be PhD oriented. We're gonna go from the streets to the suites and the suites back to the streets and drive home some things that drive GDP we're gonna have an obsession with inclusion and not disruption. This is gonna be disruptive, but we want to make sure it regenerates.
So how do you make sure there's inclusion in our society when it comes
Relationship capital. Again, what I tell you about these tech geniuses, they have a blind spot called people. They don't want to deal with people. Why did Mark Zuckerberg, who I know, spend $4 billion, he said $3 billion, which really means $5 billion, on metaverse? Because that's where he wants to live. He would do that all day, every day, all day. He likes non-people. But the reality is we deal with people. So our job is to be the connective tissue to the people. And I think that is going to be a win-win, right brain, left brain example. I'm gonna give you a real life example. I'm gonna bring home what Pat said about job disruption and creation. 2 weeks ago, I had to write an op-ed for Time. It was 1,600 words, it needed to be 800 words. I didn't want to get to 800 words, it's called the Business Plan for America, which is this conversation. I needed 1,600 words. They tried for a week and a half to get it to 800 words, they couldn't do it. Then it went over to CNBC. CNBC said, we can do it. They had 3 people working on it. They got it down to 1,200 words and ultimately changed the whole thing. I said, no, we can't do that. Then they came back to me. I said, I like the 1,600 words. I'm sitting at midnight with Bishop T.D. Jakes on the phone. I said, I'm frustrated with this. It's been all these smart people. It's been now 4 weeks. I need to get this down to 800 words. I said, John, copy, cut, and paste, put it in Chat GPT. and tell it, this is John Hope Bryant, please write an op-ed for me in my voice in 800 words. Boom, took 5 seconds. And it sounded just like me. That just then that destroyed all those jobs. Those people are useless. All that entire process was useless. This is much more efficient, but it also will create jobs, people who can handle this new activity. So you need 2 skills today. You need financial literacy skills coming out of school, and you need technology skills. You need to basically be computer literate and financially literate. You do those 2 things with basic self-esteem and a good family, and you actually have a chance for the first time in history to succeed on a level playing field. This is a seminal, I think you might have said, it's a seminal moment.
Absolutely. One of the things that actually sometime late last year, I was like, well, what if our employees start using ChatGPT, and we're a healthcare IT company, start using it where they copy paste names of patients. So I panicked, reached out to MMM, we got a AI policy in place, and well, at least I feel better that there's a policy, but how do we make sure that our business leaders are protecting their organizations against the misuse of AI? And Pat, I don't know if you have an opinion. I want to come back to you also, Dr. Maher.
Yeah, regardless of the size of your business, I think it's mandatory to have an acceptable use policy. I think you had said earlier, we just released the Work Trend Index, and 75% of employees admitted to using AI to do their daily tasks. The caveat there is whether it was provided by their employee or not. But the unique thing, and to prove your point about Atlanta's rockin', that number was actually higher here in Atlanta. It was 80%. So 8 out of 10 employees that are in the survey, if you believe those results, are already using AI to do their daily tasks. So I think it's imperative, and your policy needs to cover everyone. Your employees, consultants, contractors, vendors, everyone. And I think that you also need to be explicit, not only with what it can be used for, but what it cannot be used for. So I think that it's going to be one of those policies, AI changes on a daily basis, actually probably multiple times a day. I think it's imperative that you also set up some type of oversight and monitoring, and you evolve that policy as the technology evolves.
Yeah, and go ahead and see how, from a technical perspective, how do we prevent the machine from going rogue on us?
Well, let me address the privacy issue first. So we'll go tactical here a little bit. GPT-4, Copilot, Bard, Gemini, Claude, these are running on other people's machines. That means you have to send your data over to them and you get a response back. It's not running on your own machine. So any information you're you're sending into ChatGPT, you're sending across the internet, and it's got, nefarious people between you and the companies. What the company does with that, Microsoft and now ChatGPT and many of these others are building enterprise sorts of issues. You have that contract, that guarantee that they won't use your data in any particular way. But if you're not using those enterprise versions, you're potentially exposing yourself. You don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to collect all that information, whether it's healthcare stuff? Are they going to train the next model on it? Is that then going to get leaked by the answers when someone else asks you, like, hey, what's Azalea doing, right? But the other thing that you have to watch out for is the third-party companies. So I'll use Dropbox, for example. They can on any given day change their policies and train on your data if you're not keeping careful eye on them or if you don't have agreements. What about small little companies? What about Spotify? What about some of these smaller companies, right? We don't know. We have to keep an eye on them.
Yeah, makes sense.
So let's go through real quickly, Bob, maybe some ethical lessons and some other lessons and some questions. One is ethical considerations. John Hope's done a great job of describing those. Very important. Data quality and management, again, as was pointed out, information you put in, you're not exactly sure what's going to come out. It could be hallucinating, meaning that the large language model, ChatGPT, may be telling you something that's incorrect. And then integration with human expertise. I think this is something all of you have said, which is at the end of the day, the advice that's being given is, you got something from ChatGPT, a human needs to make that final decision. And the amount of litigation that's occurring right now is tremendous. So let's go into questions.
Of course, some people are not going to follow any ethical guidelines, and we have an election coming up in November. What do you experts expect to see the role of AI to be, and what should we all be on guard for?
John, I hope you want to answer that. I'm going to ask everybody to go on a lightning round because we've got a lot of questions here. So what's the answer, John?
Oh, this is going to be horrible. It's already horrible. I mean, you have people making videos right now of people that don't exist, and they look enormously convincing. I don't want to name names, but I've had a half dozen public figures call me in the last week who are like, that video is not me. And this is at a there's the celebrities, but we're not talking about politicians, but I'm saying if it's happening to them, if people are trying to raise money on their name with a video being distributed that they're saying that's not me. So it's already happening. This is going to be, here's the good news. This is a colonic year. You're gonna get a lot of stuff flushed through the system, and it's gonna be messy, but it's going to come out on the other side with a stronger democracy and a stronger controls and stronger systems. The weak stuff's gonna fall away. We are still the light on the hill. We are the most amazing country on the planet, and we will sort this out. But I don't want to delude you. It's going to be messy. I'll also say, Sam Altman, who I think is the Steve Jobs of this generation, told me two things that was fascinating. One, he told me that he was afraid that horrible things will happen. At the same time, he said that great things will happen. And then I asked him, Ambassador Young wanted to read a book on AI. I asked him what book should he read. He said, I don't know. This is Sam Altman. He's like, I don't know what book to tell him to read. Like, the book is being written right now. So this is going to be messy. It's going to be ready, fire, aim, and yes, horrible things between now and election year are going to happen. Stay tuned.
Pat.
All right, my name is Pat Upshaw-Monteith. My question is related to security. So I think that some of us have shared some very private, confidential information with AI, and I'm just wondering how secure. So when we go in and we put very confidential information and give it to AI, how secure should we feel about the information, and where is it going?
Yeah, if you're just using the regular off-the-shelf ChatGPT, your information is going to OpenAI's servers, which are in the Azure cloud, that's controlled now by that company. They can do whatever they want with it. I guess they'll have some terms of service. The good news is they're probably not doing much with it because they're going to get lots of other information from the internet. They're not particularly interested in every single individual. But I think like anything else, like use the same kind of sense that you use with social media. If you're talking on the social media, what are you willing to say? there.
Pat, let me
It's a
ask
good
you this
rule.
question too. From a Microsoft perspective, if people are using Microsoft products, how do they protect themselves in connection with the question that Pat?
Yeah, so John and I were just talking back and forth about encryption, and I think that's one critical point. I think when you are using our platform, when you're using OpenAI on Azure, it's your data. We don't keep your data, we don't train our model on your data. You can train models on your data, you can do whatever you want to with it, but it is your data, and it's in a secure environment.
So use the Microsoft version. Use the, within a company, your company will probably protect you if they're through the enterprise.
Yeah.
And encryption.
End-to-end encryption, and all the major hyperscalers have a pretty robust, secure environment.
You had some additional good leadership lessons here, Baha.
Hey, good afternoon. Great discussion. I heard you say earlier about kind of overcoming the fact that since 99% of all groups don't know much, that this is a perfect way to kind of start building a more level playing field. My question is not about security. My question is, who is taking the lead? Is it corporate America, academic America, or whom to drive we invest billions of dollars in public schools every year. What's happening to level the playing field where inner city kids and rural kids in public schools have access to this capability just like kids in private schools do already today? Who's changing the paradigm around what teachers know and teachers teach and what superintendents accept? Because that's how you get the talent you want in the future. So who is driving that engine for us?
John, are you driving that?
Well, that's one of the things we want to drive. That's, by the way, that's the chairman of the United College Fund and chairman of 100 Black Men of America, Milton Jones. Look, I said it's messy. The government, the reason Sam Altman called that limit is the government was trying to get ahead of something that had gotten away from them. The horse had left the barn. And so the government's trying to get ahead of this and now put a framework around it, but the government's not there. The private sector is focused on capitalism, making money. Academics are trying to study this and figure this out. Community is trying to make a living. I mean, there's nobody in charge of this. Nobody. So we will attempt to put, without repeating myself, because we want to do this quickly, some guardrails, some frameworks, and some launching pads, light some fires, avoid some infernos, and work with the biggest players, not the least of which is Microsoft, to make sure, which is what most people are using around the world, so that these become gateways. I will tell you this, there's a billionaire in Africa, his name is Strad Masiyiwa. He was worth $3 billion 2 years ago. He was the first cell phone in Nigeria, every call ever made, laid fiber optics down. He's on Bill Gates Foundation board. John, he started an AI service company, not an AI company. He's just a reseller for Microsoft and everybody else. That one company's worth $3 billion in 2 years. He was worth $3 billion before. He's worth another $3 billion just on this one company doing a resale of just AI tools and services. So this is just transformation. That's just in Africa, by the way.
With that, please help me thank my panel, Dr. Marr, John Hope, Patrick